and I saw them with mine own eyes. I didn't go looking for them because I don't have a need to. Maybe I should just look them up, but I didn't have a need to. But well, I suppose I could look it up now. If people really want to know, I suppose I could look them up now. Satellite phones. If you're interested in I'll put some information up on rodechoes.net about satellite phones. But the phones are still rather, they're kind of pricey. They're still kind of large. They're a little bit bigger than most cell phones nowadays, and they don't have all the features. Most of them don't have all the features of today's smart cell phones. Although there looks like there is one for $750 here. It looks like a smartphone. Oh, it's a satellite sleeve for an iPhone 5, an iPhone 5S. So there you go. All you Apple fanatics, you can actually turn your iPhone into a satellite phone by purchasing the sleeve for $750, which shouldn't be a problem for you because you probably doled out $400 or $500 or $600 for the iPhone anyway. But there you go. In one of the satellite companies, I guess there's two. There's Iridium, which is still out there, and Blue Cosmos or Blue Cosmo. I know of Iridium. I do not know Blue Cosmo, but I did. I thought that they would be able to take off by now. They've been around for over a decade now, as far as being out there. But maybe they're just taking the cell phone route, because cell phones were out back in the 70s as mobile phones. You had the car phone, and you had to have a service. You had the car phone in your car, and whenever you picked up the phone, you got an operator or something, and they made the calls for you and patched it through. So basically, it was kind of like a radio on your car phone. And then we went to not cell phones, but mobile phones. Again, they were pretty much based on radio frequencies. And then we finally started to get cell phones, but in the 90s, but late 80s, early 90s. But again, there were so few. Only in major cities could you possibly use a cell phone. The time, the amount of time. Well, you spent dollars per minute instead of fractions of a cent today. They were really expensive to have, and only really successful business people had them. And people that did have the cell, they never used them unless for an emergency, and they always coupled their cell phone with something called a pager. I'm sure many kids today do not know what a pager is, but they were all the rage in the 90s, early and mid 90s. A pager was it, and they were coming out with different kinds of pagers and making them, smaller, able to do more fantastic things, much like cell phones. I mean, it got to the point where you could actually call a person's pager number, dictate a short message, and that message would end up on that person's pager as a text message. So yeah, that was early texting back then, but you had to call their number in order to do that. But anyway, I digress. Just some informative stuff out there for you about. And again, pagers died because cell phones kicked it up a notch, and started acting like pagers themselves. And they became really cheap, so you didn't need a pager and a cell phone. Yeah, just like with land. This is why all these cable companies and telephone companies are trying to force you into bundles, because a lot of people have dumped their landline phone. I haven't had I don't remember. I haven't had a landline phone since probably around 2003, 2004. No landline phone. Other than business. But, for personal use, I haven't had a landline phone since 2003 or 2004. There was no need. Cell phones became that reliable and that inexpensive that it was just I would never use the landline phone. So there you have it. Now, my parents still have a landline, and they have cell phones and all that kind of stuff. And they're kind of old fashioned. They don't really use their cell phones. You still have to contact them really by their landline. That's what, look, we live in a great country that allows people to choose like that. They have the freedom to choose. They have the freedom to be and express who they are without needing to worry about if somebody is going to retaliate for that thought or belief that they have. That's the way it's supposed to be here. Shouldn't have to worry about being retaliated against because of your beliefs or your thoughts. That's a third world banana republic. Speaking of republic, Republicans passed first regular order congressional budget since 2009. What year are we in now? 2015. And here it is, May, and they've got it. They've already passed one. Republicans promised to restore order to a dysfunctional Congress in the midterm elections. Yesterday, they delivered on that campaign promise, passing the first regular order. In other words, the first real and regular full budget since 2009. And it didn't come easy. The 51-48 vote capped weeks of work by Republican leaders in the House and Senate, who shepherded the blueprint through a messy debate over defense spending that at times threatened to split their conferences. Now, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had ripped Democrats for years over their failure to pass a budget and said Tuesday's vote shows his GOP majority is getting the Senate working again. No budget will ever be perfect, but this is a budget that sensibly addresses the concerns of many different members. He said it reflects honest compromise from many different members with many different priorities. And he said that on the Senate floor. Now, the budget resolution does not carry the force of law, but structures the broad limits of spending for appropriations Congress will pass later. Now, President Obama already has threatened to veto 2 of the 12 that Congress will produce, and likely will veto at least some of the dozen in order to flex his own muscle in the budget process. Now, the Hill takes a pessimistic view of this tension, warning Republicans that they didn't do so well in the last shutdown standoff. Look, pass the budget. Here's what you do. I mean, I'm not elected, and I know what you do. I'm not an elected official, and I know what you should do. I know. Here's what you do. Let me give you some, free, practical, logical advice. Now that you have passed a budget, now that you have said, okay, we have compromised on something that the majority of Congress agrees upon. Great. Send it up to the president. President says, well, I'm going to veto it. Fine. Then you get out there and you tell the American public and you force the lamestream media to listen to you, and you shout it from the rooftops, the mountaintops, the valleys, everywhere, and you send out every single congressional member that voted for the budget. You send them out on the road talking about it at the same mantra, the same theme. We passed the first budget since 2009. It is a highly worked budget that was a compromise between a lot of people. But we passed it like the law says that we're supposed to have a budget. We got one now. We passed it. 51 people voted in favor of it. This is what the people want. And the president is the one who vetoed it. The president is the one who's shutting down the government. The president is responsible. Him and his fellow radical Democrats. And you keep pounding it. You keep pounding it because you bring it up every time they say, well, this isn't a good budget. Well, yeah, it is, because it's a compromise that the majority of the Senate agreed upon. Now, no, there's no such thing as a perfect budget, but you got to start somewhere, and this is the somewhere that the majority of people in the Senate agreed upon. Plain and simple. You just turn it on the president and the Democrats like you're supposed to. Because if they're going to come out and say, well, this is not enough spending here, not enough spending there, not enough raised taxes here, and you just say, you know what? We've already been through that, Mr. President. We've been through all those arguments, and this is what we have come up with that we believe the American people will like. They're not going to like all this extra taxation and extra spending. We're already in over $18 trillion in debt. So if the Republicans have a budget, finally, shout it from the rooftops, the mountaintops, the valleys below. It doesn't matter where they're shouting it, as long as they shout it. And turn the blame where it belongs, back on the extremist liberal Democrats and the president. Because the president, after all, is the one who's vetoing it. If he does. So this whole, Republicans are going to be blamed for the shutdown. Don't even follow it. You make your own news, if you will. You be the one to talk or to frame the narrative. If you're going to sit back and let those knuckleheads that we like to call the Democrats frame the narrative, you're going to lose every time. You're going to lose every time. So what you have to do is you have to frame the narrative. And you have to jump out there in front to frame the narrative. You have to be the first talking about this in order to frame the narrative. You've got it. You've got it right now. Everybody's starting to pay. Hey, look, this is the first regular budget that was passed since 2009. You've got it right now, Mr. McConnell. Run with it. Run. Run, McConnell, run. Run with it. What is this wimpy mamby-pamby? Oh no, we're gonna get blamed if it shuts down. We can't, we could send it up there, but if the president doesn't sign it, we're screwed. Oh, they're going to blame us for the shutdown. No, that's only going to happen if you do like the last time. You let the lamestream media and the left frame the narrative. If you jump out in front right now and frame that narrative, there's no way that they're going to be able to get away with it. Plain and simple. Oh yeah, we got 51 members of Congress of the Senate who approved this. This is just strictly a GOP bill. No, we worked really hard on this one. We compromised and probably in places that we shouldn't have compromised, but we did because we know that we needed to pass a budget. We need to move forward. This is terrible because there's not enough spending. We're not getting to 20 trillion in debt fast enough. Just if you let somebody else frame the narrative, you're always going to be on the defense, Senator McConnell. You're gonna have to frame the narrative. You're gonna have to frame the story. You're gonna have to set the pace, because if you let it get set on you, you're screwed. But if you set the pace, and you put that pace out there that is too fast for many of the left wing to keep up, you're going to win. You're going to win in votes. You're going to win with the people supporting you. You're just going to win, plain and simple. But if you sit back and let somebody else frame the narrative, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose the argument, and then you're going to get blamed. And then you're going to try to say, well, it's not our fault, but you don't own the narrative, so you can't really say that it's not your fault. Because why? Because you don't own the narrative. I don't know how else to tell you, but it's pretty plain and simple there. If you don't own the narrative, you don't own Jack. You got to get it. Now, they went on to say that... Now, this could leave Congress facing a new government shutdown fight in September with a deadline of October 1st for passing some kind of legislation to keep government funded. And I say, don't keep adding on these ad hoc things just to try to keep the government running. Let the government shut down, and it's only going to be the non-essential stuff anyway, which is a very small part of our government now. Just go ahead, let them shut it down. And then frame the narrative. If you start framing it now and start shouting it out from the mountaintops that it's not your fault because you have the budget, it's just the Democrats won't play ball this time. And who do we always say is at fault?